What actually makes a good build in Borderlands 3? Personally, I feel we don't have the metrics as of yet because there's nothing in the game that is too hard to do. Is it able to solo Grave Ward in 3 seconds? Does that define a good build? Or is it able to survive Mayhem 3 Slaughter Shaft? Both of these are metrics we can use, but again, I feel like since raids aren't here, it's hard to tell. Putting that aside, there's always new builds that you can check out, and since there's not much to do endgame right now except to farm for Anointed and different gear, you might as well check out some different stuff along your way. Lastly, Fadeaway keeps getting nerfed, especially if you have a F4k and only a F4k. You're going to be on the lookout for new and different builds to check out. And this is where the Rakk build comes in. I used the Rakk build the entire time during my leveling process, never really going into Fadeaway, and I always found it fantastic. However, now that the game's gone on longer and my gear has gotten better, this Rakk build has really started to shine. It has one of the lowest cooldowns for an action skill in the game. I believe you can get it down to 3 seconds. And I'm not saying that my gear is the best, but with a 3-second downtime, all of your anointed perks are almost on a 100% uptime. So for something like this, a Lucian's Call on the end of your action skill, your weapon damage is increased by 100%. For a short time, you're almost doing 200% damage the entire time. And did I mention that you have infinite Mohs levels of grenades? Let's get into this. So before we go any further, I just want to show you exactly what I mean. F4k has the advantage of having one of the shortest cooldowns in the entire game for his action skill set. That allows you to have almost 100% uptime, and luckily for F4k, he has one of the best perks for gun damage that you can possibly use on, I guess you could say, a 3-second cooldown. Something like the Venomous Trained Chaos, where enemies damaged by Rakk attack take 100% increased damage for a short time. That bumps you up to 830 damage per bullet, and of course, since we are playing F4k, you know we're going to be critting. You can use the Nuclear Phasor on action skill, deal 125% more weapon damage to bosses, badasses, and named enemies. Something I've never seen anybody talk about, which I might make a video for because this thing absolutely shreds the Expert Hellshock. On action skill, the next 2 magazines will have 50% bonus incendiary damage. And a Lucian's Call, as we've already said, 100% weapon damage after action skill. Your action skill is so short, you're at least a 90% uptime on all of these anointed perks. On top of that, you can get a shield like the Transformer I have here. It doesn't matter too much what the shield is. Pick one you're comfortable with. Just make sure on action skill, action cooldown rate is increased by 20% for a short time. I tried this one, and I also tried add a Rakk into your action skill, so you'd have a total of 4. I preferred this one, in my opinion, but that's because it couples very well with a certain perk we pick in the trees. You can take a look here at my class mod. We're doing our damage, not from really Rakks, although they were buffed and they do hit pretty hard now. We're basically using all of his hunter skills to increase our damage. This isn't the best in the world, but F4k's hunt skill power is increased by 25%. That's going to add 25% damage from from 4 different sources, which adds up to a lot. And it has Interplanetary Stalker on there and a few other ones. Next, we have a Reoccurring Hex. This is necessary for the infinite grenade part, but even without the infinite grenades, you are good to go on this build. I cleared trials in less than 5 minutes with this. It was close, but I did pull it off. On action skill start regenerates 1 grenade. So that means every 3 seconds you use your Rakks and you get a grenade back. Funny enough, sometimes it regenerates 2 grenades. I'm not sure if it can crit. I don't know why it does it, but it definitely has given me 2 grenades back when I press F to use my Rakks. And then lastly, your relic here, I have something like this where the entire top part is not something I'm really interested in. What I'm really interested in is radiation damage, 30% grenade damage, and 33% area of effect damage. Very similar to something I would use on Moze, but here we have it on F4k. You can add in any other weapon that you get. It's very versatile in that way. On action skill here, we have a Hawkins with 100% extra damage, a Cutsman with 50% additional bonus cryo damage on top of its fire damage to begin with. There's just so many different weapons that come with F4k that increases damage by an insane degree. Here we have a Gatlin lead sprinkler with, again, giving us 100% bonus damage on a 3-second cooldown. I'm not sure. I do not have an Amara, but I think that's one of the lowest action skills in the game. So every game in the world that I know of always has an internal cooldown. What that is you know how you cannot throw grenades one after another. There's that short period where you're reaching for another grenade. And even though you might have 3 Rakk charges, you can't throw them back to back to back. There's always that 2-second cooldown between Rakk charges. So what are you supposed to do during that time? Well, you're going to be shooting, of course. Since you have Anointed perks up almost all the time, your gun damage is actually kind of insane. Especially for bosses that grenades work really well on. Katagawa Ball, the Trant, all of those kind of bosses you really shred. On top of that, this build I've cleared 5-minute trials with. I've also soloed Mayhem 3 Slaughter Shaft. I feel like being able to do those things are more important than being able to kill Grave Ward in 3 seconds. This build is good at Grave Ward farming, but there are better ones. So what do we have here? Well, let's talk about Interplanetary Stalker. You gain a ton of damage from this hunt skill right here. This is a brand new build that I just did now, but all of the footage you are seeing is running this build. I wanted to try out Second Intention, increased reload speed, because again, that Hellshock pistol, since it's Maliwan, the reload speed on it is pretty long. So I brought this and I am loving it. This is the first time I've ever tried this perk and I really enjoy it. It makes the gameplay feel so much more smooth. Hunter's Eye here. This is very important, especially since you're going to be farming bosses that can be grenaded. Most of them are robots. So you have a plus 36% extra damage here. You can change this out if you would like to. Of course, we're bringing head count for action skill cooldown timers, 2 Fang for extra projectile chance, Big Game for his hunter skill effects and duration. So now Interplanetary Stalker is getting a large buff here. On this build, I actually opted out of Most Dangerous Game. I've had it on every single build I've ever had. I opted out of it, and I honestly haven't noticed a big difference. Unless you're running Slaughterhouse, badasses are few and far between, even on Mayhem 3, where you're getting enough damage and grenades that you're not even going to notice when you're fighting a badass. This here is very important for Rakks because they're constantly up, so you're getting an extra 50% damage. Why not take this? I opted out for Galactic Shadow. I usually put this in the build, chose not to. We took this as our capstone. And then over on the green tree, Furious Attack. This again is a hunt skill that we're getting bonus effects from through the red tree. We had to put a flex point here into regeneration health. Here we have Eager to Impress, action skill cooldown timer, or when you kill an enemy. Fantastic to have. This is something you do not need to bring. You might want to stick it here if you can, but this is my favorite perk in the game. My pet saves me more than any teammate ever has. Here we have, while moving, F4k regenerates health and gains damage reduction. And if you stand still, you gain bonus damage. And then I opted out for going to Hidden Machine. I usually do, but I wanted more points in the Fast and Furious. This ability is 25% extra damage at all times and plus 10% extra movement speed. And you're going to be one speedy boy. All of this combines into an incredible amount of single target damage due to all the stacking hunt skills and a very fantastic AoE kind of build with the Rakks constantly flinging out, plus the grenades, plus the damage, explosion perks, everything that you can think of, the build does really well. Lastly, what are we taking? The pet is kind of up to you. I personally like having a little bit of health and tankiness within the build. So we went with a spider ant, and we went with the fire one, the spider ant, the scorcher, because we want that extra 10% elemental damage. If you feel like you're dying too much or you don't have the best shield, you might want to go for the countess. Lastly, this is kind of important here, or at least it's if you're trying to solo mayhem 3 stuff like Slaughter Shaft. I've never really messed around with this perk before. I really enjoy it. As long as you have a beefy enough shield, you're constantly going to be healing your health. Now, I couldn't figure this out based on how the game works. It's almost impossible to tell. I'm not sure if the more racks return to you, you get 7% per rack. If that's the case, this one for our second ability might be better, but I haven't been able to find out or tell. So currently we're going for +1 skill charge and again a 20% cooldown reduction. This leaves you for, like I said, about a 4-second cooldown on your racks with the build and items that you've seen in this video. And there you go, guys. Infinite Grenade Fl4k plus a decent amount of AoE and pretty damn good single target damage due to the hunt skills. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this kind of video, full breakdown and weapon guides, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Like I said, we never know what they may change or nerf, so all of these things are subject to change. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you on the next one. TikTak out.